We're coming to you live from Cole Creative in downtown Wilkes-Barre. I'm Rich Howells. I'm the founder and editor of NEPA Scene.
And I'm John Popko from Alt 92.1, and I'm the Saturday host of Alt Natives on Alt 92.1.
And tonight we're here with Black Scranton Project founder and St. John's University adjunct professor Glynis M. Johns. So we're going to talk about the Black experience in Scranton from both a historical and modern perspective, local artists of color, upcoming Black Scranton Month events, Black History Month events in Scranton.
We could call it Black Scranton Month.
That's cool. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is because I don't know how many other Black History Month events are going on, but yours are obviously going to be on the top of that, so might as well. And much more. So please tune in for the full hour. We love to hear from you. The show is much more fun, much more interesting when you guys comment down below. So make sure that you join our conversation and everything that we have to talk to Glynis here tonight about. Lots and lots of stuff in store, and some beers as well to pop open. So stay tuned for that as well.
I'm just trying to get warm.
Yeah, I know, right?
It's freezing.
Will Beekman at the Kirby's got to stop doing these shows. Too many shows, Will. Not on Wednesdays.
Stop having a successful business in downtown Wilkes-Barre.
What are you doing here?
You're ruining Wilkes-Barre.
I walk so far and it's 2 degrees out.
He's also the only one that actually has the sidewalks clear. Everybody else just said, screw it, apparently. It's like sliding the entire way here. It was ridiculous.
I was shoveling my driveway last night, and I almost ate it probably like 50 times from the ice.
That's underneath. At least we're not in Chicago. It's like negative 20 degrees or something like that.
Yeah, that's true.
So it could be worse.
It could be worse. You're right.
So what do we get tonight anyway?
Well, I'm very excited because I missed the 19th anniversary party that Beer Boys had.
Yeah.
Was it this past weekend?
Mm-hmm. Which was very successful, by the way.
I heard. I saw a picture. That's awesome. But they're doing a Strongbow Gold Apple Cider, which I think is what they have on tap tonight.
Yep, that is the Glass Night special. You can stop down for $2.75 Strongbow cider pints in a free Strongbow glass.
Coors Light, which is a proud sponsor of Alt Natives on Alt 92.1.
There you go.
Saturday nights.
They put that in there just for you.
You best know. And I'm excited for this. This is the SBC Do You Know the Muffin Man?
And I'm excited for that, too.
I think this is like a special to them. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't know, whatever. But
I haven't seen it anywhere else except Beer Boys.
Yeah,
so
that's exciting.
I have not tried that one. I'm an SBC fan, for sure.
We'll do that first then.
All right, that'll be the first
That's
one we
easy enough.
open. They have a half-price happy hour on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays from 9 to 11, Fridays and Saturdays from 8 till midnight. So stop down and take advantage of the wide selection, 72 beers on tap. There's also live entertainment on weekends at 10 p.m. In fact, actually, Frank Marzinkowski, who also has played many times at the NEPA Scene open mic, so if you've watched our live streams or been to any of those events, you've seen him there. So stop down Friday, 10 to 1. He's going to be there playing acoustic, and ask him to play that Tool cover. He's very good at it. I don't know how he does it with one acoustic guitar, but he sounds like the entirety of Tool. It's pretty epic.
I was not expecting that color.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. Well, is it like a blueberry muffin, right?
Yeah, I guess. I wasn't really sure what to expect.
It smells like pineapple-y, like.
It does. It smells fruity. There's more to be had too. So.
Interesting. It's more citrusy than
Yeah, it's more citrusy. It kind of has like that bite like an IPA, but is it an ale or is it like a?
I don't know.
We don't know.
I think it's an IPA actually, or it's supposed to be like a hoppier sort of beer.
I'll find out.
People are always interested, or like always shocked when I know a little bit about beers. Like,
I'm just happy here to have you here because, like I said, the last few times, well, I missed the last 2 weeks. I don't know if you guys had crushing beers or not without me, but
We had some, yeah. We didn't. We didn't go through the whole 3 like we do when you're here.
It's hard. You know?
yeah, this is like summery. Like I feel like I can have this like outside, like
Fine.
bringing back warmer memories of the warmer days. You know?
Yes.
We need those.
Seems so long. gone at this
Yeah,
point.
right.
We could just add this today or recently. It is an IPA, so that makes
Okay.
sense.
All right.
Ding.
It doesn't actually. It doesn't taste too
No,
much
it's
like
not.
an IPA, though.
It's not that bitter intenseness like some IPAs have. You know,
Mhm.
I could dig this. I like this.
Yeah, a lot of those I think are like an test of endurance. Like,
Yeah.
how much do you like pine cleaner? Because that's what this tastes like.
Yeah, and they always just remind me of like festivals. Like every time you go to festivals, like, well, we just have IPAs, and you're like, all right, whatever. And you
Right.
have like 2 giant cups of them, and you're just like, Well, that's my experience anyway. I don't know about everybody else, but for me, that's what I get.
Yeah, they're not very refreshing, especially for a festival. You're outside, you
Yeah.
want to have something a little more,
Yeah.
citrusy, like a fruit beer or something.
Yeah, I would grab this. It's cool.
It's a hazy double IPA.
Mm.
I see. Interesting. Well, thank you, Beer Boys.
Yeah, thanks.
Also want to plug the V-Spot, one of the most popular bars in northeastern Pennsylvania with live entertainment every night of the week. This week they have Pat McGlynn on Thursday and 2 of the biggest drawing bands in the area this weekend, Grace's Downfall with hard rock on Friday and Black Tie Stereo with pop rock on Saturday. And, of course, DJ Huff is hosting karaoke on Sunday. And I guess we should talk about...
Yeah, I think, and Vinny is watching, so I think it would be good of us to quickly clear up the.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard about this. So, supposedly, everybody was spreading this rumor. It was all over Facebook and everything that there was a shooting at the V-Spot, which
There was not.
There
I live nearby. I didn't hear anything
was
about
definitely
Good,
not
good.
any sort of... and not even close, because they're such a popular place, and the place is always packed on Sundays for karaoke, so you'd think, okay, there would be tons of eyewitnesses if something like that happened. So it turns out they got the story like the day after the rumor had already spread and done its damage, that somebody was a block away, was selling weed out of their house, and 2 people show up, they robbed him, and then shot him, and then he's like, okay, the cops are going to show up, I need to make up a story that I'm not a drug dealer.
That was in the paper, right?
Yeah,
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 I saw it this afternoon.
Yeah, it was in the paper.
I was in the
They-
paper.
Some good news. Some good news.
Yeah.
In the paper.
Hopefully not associated with that.
No,
Yeah.
no, it was all about Black Scranton. It was like all the cool things we're doing in the community, but I did see that story.
Yeah. So that had nothing to do with the V-Spot, just to clear that up. So if anybody does say that, you see them on Facebook, you give them a slap. Tell them no.
Yeah. Well, the news didn't do any favors. They keep showing this footage of the cop cars, and then right behind the cop cars is the V-Spot bar.
Right.
So people don't listen and people don't read,
Yeah.
so
yeah.
they see things and then they make them up.
Right,
Yeah.
I think Vinny said that. I saw the live video that Vinny did the following morning, which
This horrible bedhead.
I mean, my pants got 2 inches shorter. I don't know about anybody else, but he said that people thought that he got shot. That Vinny,
yeah, there was people texting him like, "Are you okay?"
Vinny got shot.
It's funny how these things like the
Yeah.
telephone game.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because they came in to record a commercial a couple days later, and one of the lines they said was, "The only shots that you'll see and hear are coming from the bartenders." So unfortunate for those guys, but
Yeah, that's
the V-Spot is a safe place.
absolutely always has been.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was weird to hear that, but figured we'd mention it so before you get the comments going, "Oh, there was a shooting there." No, it's not.
Safe place to drink, and if you need a safe place to go, you can
Yeah,
be a safe place.
Vinny will protect you.
Yeah, Vinny will take care of you.
So let's talk a little bit about. So you're from Scranton originally.
Born and raised.
Okay, so you know the deal about the area. You're all about that.
Yeah,
so
it's weird.
Can Tell us about growing up here, a little bit about yourself.
So, born and raised in Scranton, went to elementary school, middle school, high school, graduated from Scranton High, 2011. What's up? And then growing up, I'm like, being from Scranton is like not a cool thing. Like, I'm always like, I don't want to be from Scranton. I would tell people I'm from Philly all the time, or from like Baltimore. Like, that's where my family was all the time. Facebook would say I'm like from Kingston, Jamaica, like to be cool. Like, I didn't want to tell people I'm from Scranton. I thought it was like a stigmatizing, like a lame place to be, especially when people every single day would come to you and ask you where you're from. People automatically assume if you're black, you're from somewhere else, right? So I always felt like it was a mistake that I was born here. Like, how could you guys move from Baltimore and then have kids here? What, you know? So for me, it was just like that thing that I just wanted to get away from so badly. So when I applied for schools, I applied to anywhere outside of Pennsylvania. Like, I was like, I'm not trying to be in the state at all. So I ended up at St. John's in Queens. When I was there, I met so many amazing people of color, like from different spaces all across this planet, you know? And for me, it like really made me think about my identity and what it means to be black and the whole black experience in the African American diaspora and how broad it spreads. Like, it's not just New York, it's just not Chicago, Atlanta, like those major hubs, but we're everywhere. So as I ended my bachelor's degree, I knew I was going to go get my master's, and I was going to stay at St. John's for the master's program. So they told us you have to think of a research project that would last you for 2 years. So, you know, racking my brain trying to think about what it would be. And I come home for like an Easter break. I'm at like Backyard Ale House somewhere downtown, and someone comes up to me and like, oh, like, where are you from? Are you from Scranton? I'm like, yeah, I'm from Scranton. Like, where'd you go? Scranton High School, that's where I graduated. Like, no, shut up. I'm like, yeah, what year? Class of 2011. The person goes, I'm from class of 2011. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like, it's a big school. We don't know each other. We wouldn't know each other. And then this person goes, yeah, I would. I know all the black people at my high school. So I was like, no, apparently you don't. So, okay. So then it just like, I got this thing in my head. It's like, okay, so why is it that like, if you're black, you can't be from Scranton? And because there's a few number of us that you automatically assume you know everybody. Like, what is that about? So then I wanted to know how long black people have been here. Like, I wanted to know like the earliest, like how far back can we go? So that became my research question. And then it just spiraled into this project that then became my graduate thesis. So it was like 80 pages of just research and history that I could not leave in those pages. I knew that I needed to share this with my community. I had to come back because it became so empowering for me. It really made me feel like where I'm from is important in this identity that I have, especially when we talk about Scranton and how, like, we kind of pride it on being like this like ethnically diverse place, and we celebrate these different cultures, but the African American culture is not celebrated in the same way we celebrate Irish or Italian culture when we've been here a lot longer than those. And I say that not to down anybody's ethnicity or culture or anything, but it's like, why can't we be added into this like historical cultural fabric of this place? So that's like what I was looking at. And also in my graduate thesis, I was looking at this concept of cultural amnesia and structural amnesia. And for people who don't know what that means, it's basically a concept that looks at why historically we forget certain things, and if it's an intentional way about writing history where people are left out. And as we get further along, like, why, like, it's just like this blurring, like, why don't we remember these things? What are the reasons why? Like, how do we navigate this space and where we just literally like draw a line around people, draw a line around communities so we never see them? So that's kind of what I talked about in my research, and then brought me here to share all those things.
Well, you see so much about the Irish in the area, the Polish, you know, and the Italians, and you don't see that. You don't see enough of history there. And what did you find through your research? Did you find that there were some interesting communities here and that made an impact, or did things that maybe the average person wouldn't know about?
Yeah, I have stacks of stories. But one thing I did want to investigate, we know this is like an anthracite region, an anthracite town. So a lot of people ask me, and including myself, I asked, what about the black coal miners? Where were they? Because when we talk about this era, early 1900s, pushing into the 1930s, this was an era of like black codes, black laws, Jim Crow. So you have people that are getting locked up and being part of this like prison lease system. So if you're in the South, in Virginia even, a lot of African American men in particular were being incarcerated and being sent into the mines in Virginia and Birmingham and different places, right? So once they left, they were able to take this skill and have it written off as something that can be a profit for them once they're able to gain their freedom back again. So I wanted to know, like, what happened when they came to this area? Were those folks there, but were there also other folks that were part of this, like, great migration that ended up here into the mines? Because this was a lucrative place. It's, like, basically black gold. People were coming here for that. Very, very, very little evidence. In 1900, I think there was 4 men that worked in the mines, not known in what capacity. That's all the census says. By 1940, there were 77 African Americans in the mine. Don't know to which capacity. And then by 1950, there was only 5. So I don't know what happened in those 10 years. So that was something big that I needed to find out. And I still have found no names, little evidence about the capacity in which they worked. So for me, I still say there wasn't any African American coal miners. And I'm gonna stick with that, and people can argue with me, and I'd love to have that argument. But the only evidence I can find in the papers were there were some African Americans that were cooks to the guards of the mines. So that gives you, I guess, you know, like you can say you work for the mines or a mining company,
Sure.
but you're not in those like known positions. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like where I've drawn the line with that. But beyond the coal mining aspect of African American history here, we had black businesses. One of my favorite stories to tell is we had a black operated fire department here in Scranton, operated by 20 African American men because there was a need. And this was in the 1870s. So we're just talking maybe 10 years after slavery was emancipated. At this point, there was like 60% of African Americans were illiterate. A lot of folks were impoverished, didn't have jobs. But we had a community in our city that said we didn't have a hook and ladder company. And a hook and ladder is basically an apparatus that hooks to the side of the building so you can get up to the other floors. Sure. So at this point in Scranton's history, there wasn't a hook and ladder company for about like 8 years or so, and it's devastating because people were losing lives because they weren't able to save. There was no one to run this machinery to help folks. So they saw a need, and they gathered together to save hundreds of people. And it was ran by 20 African-American men. And one of those African-American men was Lincoln Tillman, and he became the first pensioned African-American firefighter in the city of Scranton. So that story to me is just literally incredible. Again, it's at this time in African-American life that is so pivotal because you have folks that, again, are either first generation out of slavery, are transitioning to a life of freedom, or like battling those two aspects, or if you're like right in the middle of that, right. It's that I think that's a really interesting time to look at. And then there's still the laws that tell you that you're still 3/5 of a human being, and then you have to, continue to make money, have a family, build a community, and all of those things. And African Americans were able to do that here in a way that some cities didn't even, so that's incredible. And I think it definitely deserves national spotlight. So, I just want to tell these stories to people because it's so inspiring, like to anyone, and especially the black and brown kids here who are like, I want to be a firefighter. I want to be able to tell them like, hey, did you know, like this happened like so long ago, like right after the Civil War we had like, I think that is so fascinating. And the fact that I found that on my own and like, I couldn't go to a library for that, even though they have been very helpful. There was no place where you can find this history. So for me, I wanted to build a space so people can use it for research, out of curiosity, maybe find missing relatives. And I wanted to make sure that I use my graduate training to make sure that this is archived properly. So like I said, if anyone wants to use it for their research, they'll be able to see where I got it from, cite it properly, and keep building on this archive, because I just want to start the foundation so people can come in and then add to it, and it becomes like this self-growing like pillar of the community. So
So that is the Black Scranton Project. Then,
Yeah.
is to archive all these things.
That's
make
like the
them available.
backbone for me of this project. But I love the arts. I love working with artists, so that's another huge aspect where I love to collaborate with local artists of color and try and give them the spotlight, give them a place where they feel comfortable to display their arts in ways that you might not always be comfortable, or do it in a way that gives it pride, gives it substance. Because again, I think we do have a really cool art scene out here, but I feel like there's a chunk of people that feel kind of locked out, or like this space isn't for them, or uncomfortable going into these spaces. And and I'm like, well, why not just create our own, you know? And the spaces that I'm creating are not limiting to anyone. I want people to come in and like, let's start having dialogue. Like, what is it about this that you haven't seen before? Like, what is cool? What is interesting? Like, how can we put these two things together? How can we collab on stuff? So that's what I really like, and it's been working. You know, I've collabed with Scranton Fringe Fest, Queer NEPA, a bunch of other local groups acting together, but they're very super inclusive. But just like a lot of groups that like kind of have the same message, or kind of are like on the same wave that I am. Like that's I just want to just work with people and start bringing groups together instead of just being like isolated entities in the community. You know, I think there are all these connections that we can make, and we're not really taking the time to use them. So that's what I want the Black Scranton Project to be like a space where you can end up anywhere else.
Well, there are some really cool black artists here. You guys featured them at, you did one in November. And can you talk a little bit about the artists that you met through that and the stuff that they create?
Yeah, so in November we had the Shout Out Black Art Exhibition, and that was my first curating event endeavor ever. But it turned out amazing. So I basically put a blast out on the internet like, hey, looking for POC artists to do this First Friday event. And that's pretty much how I connected with all of the artists. So I had Gosmer there, non-gender conforming artist, mixed media, does soft sculptures and pencil drawings. So beautiful. So like this whimsical, sort of like mystical, really, really cool creatures that she makes. And they make, I'm sorry. And it was just, I was like, your work is so dope. They have like super awesome like their style is so cool and different. And again, I wanted to pick people who show a range of the Black identity, you know what I'm saying? Like we're not just like a monolith, like we come in all different shades and colors and sexualities and things like that. So their work was just out of this world crazy. I had another person, graduate from Marywood. His name is Emmanuel. He does a lot of like hand lettering, graphic design work. Super dope, so cool. So I had him featured. Another artist, Jorge, who's actually Latino but diaspora. I just wanted to show some other dimensions to the project and not just be like Black only, but like people of color. So I'm not limiting. So he does a lot of illustrations. He actually works for the Scranton Times. Super dope. A lot of his work is featured all throughout my project because I commissioned him to do some illustrations. So you'll see them a lot throughout the Black Scranton Project. I also had a student artist named Nala, and she did some digital work and some watercolor painting. She is so brilliant of an artist. She's 14, and I know she's going to be amazing. Like when she becomes an adult, watch out. She's gonna be like, her talent is gonna just go places. So I was happy with that, and she felt really inspired and empowered, like that she was able to have like the spotlight and like showcase her work that she's doing. And then I also had another artist. Her name is Gabrielle. She's a student at Marywood as well. She did paintings, oil paintings, and some ceramic sort of pottery and sculptures that were really, really cool. And I think those were all of my artists, that I had there. I'm trying to think visually. Yeah, those were all my artists for then. And they are all, like, had their own unique style. They all fit, like, into the space that I was trying to create so amazingly. Oh, my gosh. No, that's not everybody. And last but totally not least, Travis Prince. He's an amazing oil painter, and he's going to be featured in my February month of stuff that I'm doing in the Steamtown Mall. He does oil painting. His work is phenomenal. Like his paintings are like so breathtakingly real. it's the pictures of his work don't even do it justice. Like, you just have to see them in person. And he's also going to go places. He's inspired by a lot of cool artists. And yeah, now I consider them all friends. Like, they're all great people. They're all so talented. And it was just really nice to see that the response that the community gave to them, and then the connections that they made with other folks, and like having their work shown like in different places in Wilkes-Barre and Abington and different places. So that was really cool. And yeah, I just, like I said, that event was really to just showcase their art, and let people know that this is like a multi-dimensional project. So that was a fun night. Definitely fun.
Well, events like that I think are so important because there seems like, in areas where, like an area like here that's predominantly white, there seems like there's kind of that invisible wall there where you can't reach out, or the black people feel as disconnected as we do to them, and so you go to an event like this and you walk in and you're looking at art, you're already involved, you're already meeting people and that kind of thing. Did you feel like that growing up as well?
I felt a lot of times where we'd go to spaces and like, oh, like these are like groundbreaking artists and these are like the best in the area, or not even about it being the best or the worst, but you go into these spaces of art or wherever, and you never see yourself in it. You don't see yourself in the artist. You don't see yourself in the work. It doesn't become as inspiring, especially as an artist. Not saying that white art isn't inspiring. It's definitely not true.
Sure.
But it makes it like there's not that much of a connection there. It's like it kind of becomes fleeting in a way, where you go to these spaces and like you chat with people and they talk about the reasons they do their art or whatever, and you don't get that personal connection as much. And again, like I wanted to create, and then specifically with the Black experience and Black artists, the work that they project a lot of times is very tied to emotions and experience that projects onto their medium. And a lot of times, particularly in predominantly white spaces, it's seen as offensive or too rough or like too radical in a sense, So then you have to downplay yourself, or you have to like water down your talent to suit the broader audience. So then that really isn't you being your most creative self, Right. And I found that with me a lot of times. Like, I was afraid to say things because I didn't want to offend certain people. I didn't want to draw or write things because I didn't want to offend certain people. I didn't want to call something what it was because I didn't want to offend certain people. So you think about that, and I was thinking about that when I was selecting artists, because I want their work to be bold and unapologetic. So that way the young folks, the kids, the other artists, other people can come in and be like, I can be unapologetic too, and it can be beautiful, and it can be understood the way that I'm trying to interpret it. So I think that happened a lot with me, and I know a lot of other Black artists and artists of color in the area who kind of felt that way, where you kind of have to treat your art in a certain way, or protect it, or only show it to specific audiences because you're afraid of the response. And I mean, I've gotten that already. So yeah, like I just want to like let people know that it's okay. We live in a time now, like, say how you feel, but have some substance behind it and speak like with truth. And yeah, like I just want people to just be like, call things by their name, and don't be afraid to call out things that are wrong, and don't be afraid to call out things that are true either. So that's kind of my motto these days.
Well, there's a certain, you're talking about topics that will make maybe white people feel uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
Or, that they're not ready to deal with in some way. Which is interesting because a lot of other art that you see, even on a typical First Friday, is stuff that's challenging, but in ways that is more comfortable. Like, it's easy to say, oh, the government sucks.
Yeah.
And to, put up a painting that, shows maybe the Statue of Liberty with a gag in her mouth or tied up or something like that. And it's like, okay, that's, I get the message, but it's maybe not necessarily provocative in any way that is going to offend anybody. Like, anybody can go, oh, yeah, I see that. Whether you're liberal or conservative, you can look at that and go, yeah, okay. But, you know,
Yeah.
these types of things, I think people are not ready to talk about those topics, but what you are is what you're saying, and this project is.
Yeah. And again, I had to come to terms with that with myself, because especially deciding on what I want to name this project, because initially, well, even taking it all the way back to 2015 when I started my graduate thesis, well, it was 2016 when I started it. When I was trying to come up with a title for it, I really wanted it to be something bold that got to the point, but also, challenged ideas. So my graduate thesis was titled "But You're Black: The Overlooked Community of Scranton, Pennsylvania," and I chose that because of the conversation I told you about outside of the bar, like, but you're black, like, I know everyone there, you know. So to me, it was just like, but you're black, you can't be from Scranton. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's kind of what I wanted to show. And we are this overlooked community because we've been here for so long, and we kind of just are so transient that people just assume us to be the folks in the community that are going to move out in a few years. They're going to move back to Philly. They're going to move back here. Or, you know, they're just going to, you know, do these things. And it's like, no, why can't we have property? Why can't we go to the same school as you? Why can't I build a family here? Why can't, you know, I give something to the next generation? Why are you assuming I'm going to leave?
Right.
That is one thing that, so that's why I wanted to challenge ideas. And then coming to, for the organization, the Black Scranton Project, I wanted it to be something simple, not too many words, you know, but explain what it is. So the Black Scranton Project is a project dedicated to Black culture.
Right.
Just, that's it. It's not trying to make Scranton black. That's not what it is. Some people think that's what it is. It's not. That's the biggest thing. People are like, well, isn't it? We can't call it white Scranton. I'm like, because Scranton is white. We don't need to call it white Scranton. I've been having those battles on Facebook where people are like, I'd come to this event, but you call it Black Scranton. If you change the name, then maybe I will come. And I'm like, see, that's exactly. So I was like, this is the teachable moment for you. So, okay, white anonymous Facebook person, you want me to change the name to make you comfortable. So why, and the example I use a lot of times is, we don't call the Irish Society of Scranton racist, right?
Right.
Because it is a society that celebrates a culture, an identity, and a heritage, which is the Irish one, right? And so for me, the Black Scranton Project does all of those things because Black is an identity, Black is a culture, Black is an ethnicity, Black is a diaspora. So why would I call it anything different than that? Because that one word means a lot of things. And it's not changing anything. It's not necessarily like, it's not changing anything. It's just adding to the space that we already call something else. And I think so many people are afraid to use the word black and brown and African American. And it's like, but just call it by its name. If someone wants to be called black, call them black. If someone wants to be called African American, call them African American. And so for this project, I use those words interchangeably because I'm still grappling with maybe my own identity, but the identity of the community, you know, because there's certain people that do only identify as Black because they don't feel connected to Africa, which is understandable. And then you do have folks that want to be called African American because it seems like they want to connect to their African roots. It seems more politically correct in some terms.
Sure.
So I use those terms interchangeably, and you'll see that in the project, and you'll see that in a lot of things that I do, because I myself haven't decided on if I consider myself an African American woman or a Black woman or both. So I use them interchangeably, and I think that we should be comfortable with the fluidity in doing those things. And especially, again, when I'm speaking to white people and I'm speaking to others that don't identify as me, I have to be comfortable in letting people know these things. Same thing when people are grappling with their sexual identity, you know, and they're like, these are the things I want to be called. And then you are like, okay, I will do those things. And I think a lot of times, particularly with white people, they get so uncomfortable with even addressing race at all. Like they think like if you don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. And I'm like, I'm really not racist. And it's like,
Right.
That's totally fine. And actually, no, it's not totally fine at all. Like, you have to actually do that. And sometimes you do things that are racist that you don't know about. And again, we can move on from that. And it can be forgivable to certain extents. And I also tell people that too. So yeah, I'm all for dialogue and I'm all for learning. I'm an educator. I like to teach people of all races and colors. It doesn't matter. And we all step into different boundaries. You know, I call people things by their wrong names, or I say something that's politically incorrect sometimes. But then you learn, and then you say, okay, I won't do that again. Or maybe I won't post something like that, because now I know the origins and, you know, those sorts of things. So
Yeah.
I kind of digressed into a whole nother ideology of thought. But yeah, just to make those things clear.
Yeah, and that's a whole, you know, tough discussion in its own right, you know, because I think we're at the point now where we're trying to hold people accountable for saying certain things or whatever, and then maybe we push it too far and we don't allow these people to be forgiven or talk to them in any real way. You know, some stuff isn't maybe forgivable, but all other stuff, it's like, okay, we can sit down and have a talk about, like the Kevin Hart thing, and, you know, and sat down with Ellen and all that kind of stuff. It's like, you know, we all need to talk about these things. We can't just stop. You know, I could easily do 100 podcasts about just bands all day, and it's easy to talk about because I like music.
Yeah.
Everybody likes music. We can sit here and talk about those things, but it's important to have discussions about other stuff that's going to take you out of your comfort zone a little bit. Or like, you know, a couple weeks ago we talked about the Women's March, and I'm a guy, so I'm just here to listen. You know, and okay, help me understand what you guys are fighting for, what is the importance of this, that kind of thing, and to break down some of those misconceptions. We did kind of a devil's advocate sort of thing. You know, okay, these are the things that I hear people say. Here, what is the reality of those things? Like the tying back into what we're talking about, you hear people all the time, well, you can't say feminist because feminist gives the impression that you care about females more than males, that you want females to dominate males or to take over the world or whatever the case may be. And it's about everybody being on the same plane. It's about fighting for equality and that sort of stuff. And I think it's the same thing here where, you know, saying that you're for blacks or black artists or the black community doesn't mean that the white community is now bad or demonized in any way. It's that we all need to be on the same plane, and we all need to be interacting and having these conversations, as opposed to, you know, saying that somebody's better than somebody else. That's not what this is supposed to be. Right,
and opening space and giving, like, other artists that don't look like you a chance, you know. And I think, and also with that last exhibit, our Shout Out Black Art exhibition, just the name in itself, people are like, I don't know, it's a great idea, but I don't know if we can have it here yet because I don't know, like, and I'm like, okay, fine, we don't need to have it here. I'll find somewhere else, you know. And then like I already knew, like, off the bat, I'm like, I really want to have this at the Cultural Center, but I don't know if they'll let me. So I went around the Cultural Center, and then I was like, okay, let's ask. I'm like, let's just ask. And they're like, yeah, have it here, like whatever you want to do. And I was just so excited because the one space that I thought would be kind of do that thing of being like, well, we don't know, how long, what are you showing, can we see, this is, you know, like that whole dance around the idea. No, they were like, whatever you need, let's set it up here. How do you want this? How do we advertise this? What do you need? How can we support you? Do you want to have the bar open? Like, everything was just great, the response. So yeah, shout out to Maria, shout out to the Culture Center. Yeah, that's another thing. So just opening up spaces. If you're not comfortable or you don't know, ask them. That's fine. You want to see whatever it is. I'm not telling everyone to just let people into your spaces. But again, like, if we are talking about, like, First Friday being, like, this whole, like, art scene and, like, being on the map and, like, doing all of these cool things, and art is, I don't think art really has that many rules. Like, I think art is this one space where you can literally be yourself. And, like, why did it take so long for us to have, like a black art exhibition, like just like a whole, like, space where and it was only for one day, which is the kind of bummer, because people were like, I want to see more, like, I'm gonna miss it for First Friday. So yeah, I was just like, why can't we just have a space that just shows artists of color? Like, why is that so demonizing? It's not, you know. Like, can we just, you know, like, there's been art exhibitions that show like just nudist art, you know, just you know, like, random, I don't know, like, I just felt like, why are we being weird about it? Let's just see what happens. And the community loved it. Like, so many people came, and it was pouring down rain, and we saw almost over 100 people come through, you know.
Awesome.
from what I kept track on. So yeah, like people were so interested in what this was going to be about, and I think, yeah, like people were curious, and that just showed me that there's a need for just to divert, like, you know, mix it up, like add some flavor every now and then to some things that we're doing, and yeah, shake up this city, because people are stuck in a lot of just like ruts, stuck in a lot of just like same old ways, you know, and you never know until you try. So
Absolutely. Well, the first Friday, I think, is very comfortable in general. It is very safe art, even
Yeah.
outside of race or anything else. It's just it is very, you know, I'm here to sip my wine and go, yeah, that looks good, and then you know, leave and talk to my friends or
Yeah.
whatever. You know, it's not there. There's not really any boundaries being pushed. And,
Yeah.
and it needs to be. I mean, that's the whole point of art, I think.
yeah, because I love going to the first Friday. I love, you know, having having the little glasses of wine here and there, but it is this kind of same like routine, this same kind of like wheel over and over again. So yeah, I'm glad that people are starting to shake it up and add new things and think about things in a different way, because I think art is limitless, and yeah, like let's do some cool things. Like the art, as we know, like the art scene out here is pretty cool. Like I've been an art person. I came from like an artist family. My mom was in art. She went to Scranton High School. My dad also. My twin brother, my older brother, we're all artists, you know. So like that's nothing new for me. But yeah, I wanted to just like try something new. Like again, so if you ever want to do something, just do it. Like, you know.
Sure.
If you ever want to make something, create that space. Like,
yeah, that's the whole point of what we're doing.
Yeah, like
Is to
NEPA Scene, there was never any like this kind of artist music talk, and you're like, let's make this space so we can do it, and then here we are, you know. So I just say, anything you want to try, I tell my students all the time, anything you want to try it. You know, I'll support you. Someone will support you. And now we have the internet, so it could be someone all the way on the other side of the world. Like, you never know. So.
It'll be interesting too to see, now. Have you applied for any grants or anything like that?
Yeah, that was also in the paper today.
Oh, okay.
So I actually got a Lackawanna County Arts and Culture grant.
Oh, great.
For this particular exhibit. So, which has been super helpful. There's supposed to be an award ceremony tomorrow, but because we have this polar freeze vortex, they canceled it. So I was looking forward to it because I wanted to see all the other people who won awards and be like, oh, congrats, cool. Can't wait to see what you're doing. You know, like I wanted to meet other folks, but it was still cool. I'm very, very blessed to actually have these opportunities, and for the Lackawanna County Arts Council Commission has been so supportive. Maureen McGuigan is like an amazing deputy art director. Like, she loves to see new things, love to see people trying new things in the community, and really does what she can to help. Even if it's not funding, she'll see if there's any spaces that can donate, or like connect you to people who can help. So the Lackawanna County Arts Department has been really awesome, and you know, shout out to them.
Yeah, they're great, and I think Maureen does some great work there. Be interesting because, you know, the commissioners have had interesting conversations about that in the last couple of years about art and stuff like that. There was, you know, one commissioner in particular made a big deal about the Fringe Festival being funded by those types of things. So when you start to push boundaries, you're going to shake up those people, and I think that's great. I think that's important to shake those people out of their slumber and talk about real issues and stuff like that, because I feel like a lot of these politicians just sit there on their high horse and they don't really tackle any real topics or talk about these topics, or know that they exist, or that there's a need for these types of things.
Yeah, I agree, and I do that now too. You got to hold people accountable, because I think especially in this area, they'll vote the same people or they'll get their ballot and there's only one person on the ballot.
Right.
What's that about? So then you just pick the same people, or like they're chosen for you in a sense, and then you never think about it again. And I know so many people who don't even know who like their representatives are. They don't know. They don't know. You know, like, and I was that person. And luckily, you know, I'm only 25, but I woke up and I said, you know, I'm going to start asking people questions who are supposed to be the ones doing things for you. Show up at city council, talk to people, talk to the school board directors, you know, let them know. Be like, hey, my dollars are going to this. Like, what are you doing for me? Like, what are, like, asking them real questions and expecting real answers. Like, that's what we need to do. And I think way more people need to start doing that in the city. We definitely need to do that. And I can go on a whole nother rant, so we won't.
Well, we definitely need more inclusivity in terms of our representatives.
Oh yeah,
as
that
well.
too.
You know, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
But you know, what I wanted to ask you too, do you feel, you know, I think the area has a racial problem in terms of the way that white people think of everybody of color in the area.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have a good population of racists in the area. Do you feel the same way?
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that because I've felt that and I've been the victim of racism.
I think it's obvious.
My whole life. Yeah. So yeah, I think we do have a problem with race in this area. We also have a problem with how we educate Black and brown students, which I think is a count of racism. So yeah, like I think we need to really start thinking about the way that we talk about people, the way that we see people, and the way that we really internalize stereotypes. And don't say this is the house that I was raised in, so this is what happened. No, you can break that cycle. I don't want to hear that. So I know a lot of people that say certain things that they think is okay because they've heard other people say it and they just continue to do it. Yeah, we have a problem with racism. We definitely do. And like I said, I've been the victim of it. Just in my general appearance, people don't like what I do or what I wear. I've had issues in school when I wear my head wrap. They're not comfortable with it. Why? Don't know. Kids love it. They're like, whoa, like, love that thing on your head, you know? But I get people are weird about things, been followed around in numerous stores before, the one time, there's just so many things. I would take the March bus a lot, you know? And one time, because I went to St. John's in New York City, so I'd come home often.
Sure.
And I bought my ticket, I'm on the bus, just slumbering, listening to music, whatever I'm doing. The bus stops at one of the stops. The bus driver comes up to me and is like, in my face, yelling, and I look at her, I'm like, excuse me, yeah? He's like, get off the bus! I'm like, no, we are not in New York City. I'm not getting off this bus. He's like, you're supposed to get off at Mount Pocono. And I was like, no, I'm not. He's like, show me your ticket. And I'm like, how? He's like, show me your ticket. And he starts lifting my bag up and dumping it in the seat next to me. And I'm like, remember, you collect the bus ticket? What are you talking about? He's like, I need to see your receipt. I need to see your receipt. And I'm like, I don't know. So I'm like fumbling all through my stuff after he's touching my personal possessions. Finally find my ticket, and he's like, oh, sorry, I just saw it. And so those types of things, like, you assumed me as being someone who wasn't supposed to be on this bus or this stop. Like, you picked me out of all the rest of the people, embarrassed me in front of everybody, because you thought I was trying to skip to New York City. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just like a kind of watered down, like, experience, but that's a real experience that happens to people probably consistently. And I felt racially profiled in that moment because he thought that I was trying to sneak off to New York City when only paying for a bus ticket to Mount Pocono, you know, and felt that he had the right to touch my personal property so that way I wouldn't go to New York City. Mm-hmm. Like, those types of things happen all the time where people feel like they have access to you in ways that they don't always have access to other people. Like touching you, like looking at you in certain ways, like just being in your personal boundary space. A lot of times as people of color, I think that happens so much. And I don't know when that will stop, especially with Black women. I know we always are kind of, like people feel like they have access to our bodies in ways that is not okay. That people want to touch your hair, grab your arm, you know, like move you physically. Mm-hmm. And that's not okay. So, and that's, you know, I say Black women in particular, but it does happen to women specifically too. So yeah, I that happens.
I always have a hard time hearing stuff like that because it just blows my mind that people think that they can act that way.
Yeah.
And I'm guilty of the fact that, like, I don't see color. I said this on the podcast many times before. My mom, when I was 5 years old, I knew, you know, when color was not, like, the separation. There was no divide. And my entire life, I never really felt that. So when I hear these stories, it's crazy to hear. And a question I thought of, you know, you lived here in Scranton your entire life, outside of, you know, to college. What was it like growing up here as a young child, a young adult, and then, you know?
I'm not going to say it was all bad. I had a great childhood. I loved being a kid. But again, I also grew up in Townhouse, which is like a housing complex. It's very diverse. A lot of like Latinos live there. I had a lot of great friends. I went to school. Obviously, all the schools are predominantly white. Had a lot of great friends. Met a lot of amazing people. Got to do really cool activities. So growing up was cool, but amongst having all of that fun and meeting a lot of cool people and having like friends who didn't take your color into consideration in our friendship, you know, you still feel differently. And like your parents have to tell you things when you are at sleepovers, like make sure they see you, make sure, you know, you don't touch anything unless people tell you to touch them. Because you're always going to be the person to be blamed. And it's like, you know, maybe that never happened, but your parents give you these things. Like, to my brothers all the time, too. Like, make sure you act a certain way. Or, like, always feeling anxiety when you leave the house. You know, like, there are certain things that your parents kind of have to warn you about that you don't always have to deal with, I think, if you are growing up as a white child. Playing in certain spaces. Again, my mom wanted to make sure that, like, hey, I want you home at this time. I want you to check in. When you go to people's houses, make sure you do these things, you know? So, like, you always kind of have to navigate in a different space. But I had a great childhood. School, meh, I didn't like it. I don't think the schools here gave me the opportunities. And now, like, looking back, it's just like I can throw it back in your face because the school didn't get me to where I'm at now. Mm-hmm. I don't credit the Scranton School District for making me a professor in the very least. No. Don't ever take credit for that, Scranton School District. Don't. Sorry. Yeah, so, like, for those reasons, no. And I see how they lock out students of color. Seeing all the students of color who didn't make it to college were kind of guided into certain spaces, or school-to-prison pipeline is a real thing.
Sure.
Students who drop out and why. Yeah, like that to me was crazy. And going to college and then seeing other students like me, or, you know, black students like me. I'm a first-generation college student, and that's already something hard to navigate. First-generation college student as a black person is even harder, you know, like, because you're kind of like, I have to learn everything on my own. Like, I have to move in a certain way, and they expect you to know how to go, like, what college is, and you have no idea because you've never seen anyone who went to college. No idea. None of it, you know? So it's like that whole thing, and then you meet people whose whole families went to college and, like, how they act, like, what they do, and it's like your whole world is open to this other space outside of Scranton. Yeah. Don't know if I answered your question, but...
No, absolutely. I mean, I saw it, you know, all the time. I went to West Scranton, and whereas, you know, I liked the school overall. You know, I had a good experiences there for the most part. Mm-hmm. But I noticed all the time that it was like modern day segregation, mm-hmm. where they would go out of their way to put the black kids in a completely different classroom almost all the time. And the one time I remember. And I remember it vividly, and it's one of those things where it seems like everybody that I know that was there kind of blocked it out of their memory. Like, what are you even talking about?
That's there was structural cultural amnesia.
Exactly, what you were talking about earlier, where we were all in the lunchroom, and the football players, who I think there was one black kid on the team, everybody else was white. Mm. And they all were picking on these guys who had come up for lunch. And there was a whole table, and it was like the black people table, like they had to be separated in some way. And it wasn't said that way, but it just felt like it was understood. And the football players started saying something to them, and it went back and forth, and they started throwing things at them or whatever. Cops were called, and who was taken out?
Yeah,
it wasn't the football players.
Yeah. And
they played that game Friday night, and like nothing ever happened. There was no punishments. There was no whatever. And anybody who was there, including the teachers who were standing there, could clearly see who the instigators were. And they did nothing about it. And I saw stuff like that all the time, and it always bothered me. It always really struck me as strange. And, you know, you don't even see, like, even our you know, NEPA history. Yeah. You know, I constantly you'd hear about the coal mines and this and that or whatever, but you didn't really hear about those types of things. Like, I did an internship I was telling you a little bit, I did an internship when I was at Marywood at the Lackawanna Historical Society. And they had a little file on Charles Edgar Patience, who I thought was a really interesting guy. Was an anthracite sculptor, and would take these big lumps of coal and turn them into these big presidential busts and stuff like that. King's College, I think, still has, he made a 2-ton altar for their church and stuff. Like, really interesting guy or whatever. Like, how come I never heard about this guy? How come I never see
I still need to
like
reach out
that?
to his family members. I got to do that.
Yeah, I believe his I think it was his daughter, if I'm not mistaken, that is still interested, like, still gets the word out about him and,
I forget
and
what
stuff
her
that
name
he's
is.
done. And his stuff is on display in
at the Anthracite Museum. They have a lot of pieces of his,
they have some of his stuff. So but you'd have to go there specifically to even know
and
that
I wanted to
guy's story.
borrow some of their collections. And I understand they have codes and they're like, we don't know what you're doing, blah. So I can't hold them accountable for that. But I will reach out to the family and see. But yeah, Charles Patience, his father actually was a sculptor. He actually worked in the mines, but he lived in Wilkes-Barre. Not Scranton. So he worked in the mines, and he would do this as a little hobby, like sell them at flea markets. And he'd have his son, Charles, help him with all of the trinkets that he would sell and things. And then he kind of developed the skill himself and then became a sculptor. And then he became the artist that we know him to be locally. His work is phenomenal, so cool. And he deserves more attention. And also, when you go to the Anthracite Museum, you see it all. But it's also, like, I don't know, the stories that they tell aren't done in a way that makes you notice it, I guess, you know?
Maybe you don't feel that personal connection.
Or, it's presented in this way where you're just, like, you see all of it, right? You're, like, and you see everything. You see the sculptures. You see everything. You might see a picture of him.
Yeah.
But you don't understand the significance because of the way that it's displayed. So you read it, you look at it, and you move on.
Sure.
And then you're not like, oh, this is significant because he's an African American. There wasn't that many African Americans in the coal mines. Also, there's really no other like people sculpting out of coal. Like, but then you add the layer of him being an African American. Like, those are the things that make it more like that makes it significant, you know. Right. And I've spoke with people in the museum, and they have other things that they're trying to display. So I totally get it. But I think that could have been a space to add him to this anthracite narrative. I don't know, because I do think that the presentation is nice, but again, like I said, it gets glossed over. Like, the way that it's presented is kind of in this, like, it's not in, like, it doesn't have to be super grand, but it's very, like, there it is, you know? So, yeah, and so that's why I want my exhibition to be bold. I think, I'm hoping when people walk in, they see something that they didn't notice before and take it in. It was very hard for me to tell everything the way that I want to tell the story with the time constraints, because I only had access to the space like as of like January 7th.
Okay.
And then I wanted to open it February 1st. And then like getting everything in there, you know, like that whole thing. And then like using the space in a way that will tell the stories that I want was very hard. So, and I didn't want to be like overwhelming, like a lot of reading, but I do want people to come in and like see different things. So I think with museums and different spaces like that, this could be a learning experience for how to incorporate these stories into permanent collections or even temporary collections and things like that. But for like my exhibition, I did think that I really wanted people to come in and like at least pull something out that they didn't draw before. And with my time constraints, I wasn't able to tell the exact stories the way I wanted to tell them, and I wasn't able to add all of the amazing things because there's so much that I found, and I had to limit it to what I can tell, like what I can visually pull, because everyone's not going to sit there and read all of these newspaper clippings, you know.
Sure.
People aren't going to read all of the text, you know. So I wanted something that was grabbing, and then something that will cause you to read. A photo that was like, that would grab your attention, and then you'd read the caption. Or if you looked at the photo, you'd get the context without having to read it, you know? So when you're in those spaces, too, like we were talking about, like in the museum and Edgar Patience's work, sometimes you'll see something powerful, but the corresponding text or how it's displayed doesn't make it feel as powerful as it actually is. So that's what I wanted to do in this space, was to show these pieces that have become powerful to me, and I wanted to make it powerful to the community as well. So, yeah, that in terms of that conversation, yeah, I think we have that problem a lot. Like when it comes to certain ethnicities or groups, and we're showing the significance, we say their significance in like 10-point font instead of like 25. You know.
Right. There's this is going to be at the marketplace at Steamtown this time.
Yeah.
So how are you maybe using that space a little bit differently than the other one that you did, and you know what's different about this exhibit from the one we talked about earlier?
So the exhibit at the marketplace at Steamtown is open the entire month. I'm trying to keep it open, so if anyone wants to volunteer, info@blackscranton.com. So I'm trying to get more volunteers to help me because it would just be me. Luckily, I work from home most of the time, so it won't be like that hard to be in the space. But it is kind of like a responsibility, and plus, they're my artifacts for the collection of Black Scranton. I don't want people to, you know, steal them or, you know, manipulate them in a way that is not. You wouldn't do that in a museum space. So I have this whole storefront space, and I have it for a month. And so the way I'm utilizing it is I want people to come in and feel like they're in a museum exhibition. I want people to come in and be like, these are artifacts. We're going to be responsible with the way that we see these things. Also respectful of the context. But I also want it to be a celebrating open space for all ages. You're going to see language that we don't typically use in 2018, but I wanted to display it in a way that has the historical aspect. So you'll see, you know, one headline says $1,300 to get Negro out. Obviously, Negro is not a term we use today, but that was a term that was used pretty much exclusively in a certain time in the early 1900s, mid 1930s, 40s, 50s. So that was the context of the time. Write about it and everything. So I want people to come into the space and respect the time frame that we're looking at, respect the fact this is the first time that we're witnessing these things, and be open to dialogue and improvement, you know. And I'm hoping, you know, after this I'll have more people to kind of like help with it. So, I wanted to do it in a way that was kind of unapologetic, show certain snippets of history, and draw like a feeling of, okay, from 1880 to 1940, these are some of the things that happened within the Black community. Again, I tried to do it in a way that would be like in a timeline, but it was kind of hard with my time constraints and what I was able to produce in that amount of time. But maybe over the course of the month, I'll like add things to it or rearrange it in a way that will take you along a timeline. But I wasn't able to with, like I said, the time constraints. But yeah, I really hope that when people walk in, they see something that they haven't seen before. I have a lot of like original photographs and different things that they'll like get to see, because when I'm talking about this research all the time, like you don't get to see it the way that I've seen it when I've been putting it together and like creating this narrative for the community. So I'm really excited for them to just see some of the things that I saw when I tell them about it. So at the very least, I hope when people come into the space, that's what they see and that's what they get from it. And then hopefully it'll evolve into something more permanent, or even like a Black Cultural Center, or even like a permanent collection in someone else's space where we can tell the story in more of like a cohesive, like robust way. But yeah, that's kind of what I really wanted to do. And again, this is pretty much the first of its kind in the city. So sometimes the first time is not always the greatest. So not saying it's not going to be great, but
Sure.
expectations.
That's
You
fair.
gotta manage those, you know?
Yeah. You have to temper. You know,
But when you walk into the Steamtown Mall, like the whole part about being unapologetic and just living in your truth, I have the big Black Scranton Project banner in front of the storefront, which is a head turner in itself.
Sure.
Head turner. People have been asking questions. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So it's bold. It's in your face, and that's kind of what I wanted. I want people to be like, "What is the Black Scranton Project?" And then it's like, "Come inside. We'll show you." Mm-hmm. That's what I want to happen. So yeah, we'll see. I'm excited for Friday. Nervous and excited because it's coming along slowly but surely.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a long evening.
And it'll be here before you know it.
Yeah.
Well, one of the, I hope that, as you do more of these things, that maybe people will come in and tell stories, because I think a lot of history that isn't written down in the regular books, or you can't research at the library, you might be able to find through people's families or people talking and say, hey, my grandparents did this or whatever, and I have pictures of them to show you, or I have a piece of their history that you might not hear somewhere else. They wrote something, or they were an artist, or whatever, that is not going to be in a typical history book, that maybe can be put together through those.
Yeah,
those
and that's
types
what
of
I'm looking
things.
for. I'm always saying that, like, if you have photos, if someone, like, even passes away and you don't know what to do with these albums or these pictures or this box of just, like, newspaper clippings, whatever, I want to see those. And it is for anyone, anywhere. Like, if you have those things, instead of just throwing them away, take them to your historical society or even the library. They'll find a space for them. Because after I started doing this work, I started to realize that a lot of the things they collect are from people who just don't know what to do with the photos. And then they'll sort through it and kind of see, So I always tell people, like, bring them to your historical society, bring them to the library, because they might see something that you don't necessarily see, and it doesn't get literally thrown away.
Yeah.
And that's what happens a lot in the Black community across the United States. Like, throughout African American history, we had to focus on certain things that are important for survival. So sometimes keeping photos, keeping newspaper clippings, keeping journals, that's not important. So if those have to go, they have to go. And oral histories are very important to, like, the Black experience, Black families, Black culture. But if the next person in line isn't there to keep those stories, then they're also gone forever. And, you see that in your own personal histories. A lot of African American families don't know anything past their grandparents every generation. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, you don't know after your own grandparents, so it's just like this stagger stepping of, like, families, and then we never have this legacy that other families have that had the privilege to archive things, keep family Bibles, keep family, history logs, all of those things, And I don't know, I don't have that either. I mean, some parts of my family, some sides of my family have done an amazing job. Sandra Brigette Miller, she's my cousin, and she's putting together the history of her family. Coming from a fugitive slave, and it's astounding, like, to be able to know that, especially as an African American, to know kind of that far back in your roots to the 1800s is rare. It's rare. It's not impossible, but it's pretty rare to know that. And yeah, it's like taking back part of your identity that we don't always have, and I think that's something that we have to work on as a society. Even to support that, like, to support the fact that we don't have history. Like, we have history. We have a general history. Like, we don't have, it's starting to change now. Like, there's a lot more people putting in this work, especially if you go, like, to the African American Museum of Heritage and Culture, like in DC, shows so much. But I think things are changing now. And we have more technology to save and value things in the way that we didn't always have, which is amazing. But yeah, I think, like, I've noticed that through my research, like, we have to take responsibility of our own narrative, because we can't always have other people write our stories, because it's not our story then. It's someone's interpretation of what your life was like. And that's why the Black Scranton Project is important for me, to make sure that I'm writing our narrative, because the books and what they wrote already is so incorrect and also slightly offensive in ways that it's like, I can't continue to let other people take control of our voice and narrative. And I can write it from a perspective of kind of knowing or understanding, because, like, I feel like it doesn't matter when you were Black. That whole Black experience kind of transcends time too, in a way. So yeah, like, when I'm writing or putting together stories or seeing the way newspapers write, like, the language in newspapers in certain eras is incredible. So when I'm writing about the ways they say certain things, I can translate it, I guess, to make sense to the Black community and to viewers and audiences in 2019, because that didn't happen. Like, for example, when they write about African Americans here in the city, like, let's say 1910, right? So Miss Louise Tanner Brown, she took over the G.W. Brown Draying Company, which was owned by a Black man, one of the most successful businesses, black businesses in northeastern Pennsylvania. She took that over, but she was also like an advocate for the community. She made sure students had access to education in the church, made sure folks had places to rest their head, funding. She did so much. And she was also an orator, so she would do a lot of talks, presentations, songs, and she would recite poetry a lot of times to the black community, but then also at other events. Like, she made sure that she went and spoke for the community, and I think that speaks volumes. So she would like recite poetry from like Paul Laurence Dunbar, who was one of like the most, well, he was considered like the first popular writer, African American writer, like in the late 1800s. So she would recite his poetry all the time, and because that was the culture, like that was what was popular now. Like, you think of like music and stuff too, like we have access to the internet. You didn't have that now. A lot of folks couldn't read, so if you couldn't read, you didn't know what people were writing about. You didn't know what was popular because you couldn't. So she'd read it to the community, and I think that's really, really important. And sometimes in the paper they would just say, Miss Louise Tanner Brown read Negro spirituals, and it's like, no, she was reading actually popular literature that was consumed by the black community. It's not necessarily Negro spirituals, because they'd call it Negro spirituals, but say it was like a poem by Paul Laurence Dunbar. So I felt like a lot of times I'd see in the paper, and my conclusion there was anything that the black community said, they chalked it up as Negro spirituals, or like they were just talking. Like, we never had the whole like what we said, quotes from what we would say, but other folks in that same dialogue would be like, Mr. So-and-so said this, this, and this. But Miss Louise Tanner Brown, who was speaking on behalf of Bethel AME Church, read a poem from this Negro spiritual. You know what I'm saying? Like, why are we saying that? Like, why can't we say what she said? Like, why is she so unimportant that we can't even give her her due diligence? We can't even be like, give her a quote. Like, a lot of times that would happen, or just like be like, oh, and then so-and-so spoke after this person. Like, those sorts of things kind of are telling in the way that we value certain voices in the community. So I kind of want to give that back if I can find ways to do it. Like I said, for example, she read a lot of Paul Laurence Dunbar. When I find that she's read it, I'll look at the poems myself and then add them into my own stories and narratives too. But a lot of that writing I can't really share with everybody all the time, so it's like hard, but I keep it for later dates. So yeah, those are some things that I kind of want to show in the exhibition. I'm not really talking too much about that, but I do want people to see headlines, because you'll read the way that it was written about us, and you'll see the things, and you'll see the voice. Like, it'll project through those newspaper clippings, right? So I want people to come to the space and be like, okay, like, I see it now. Like, I see why we didn't see you. Like, that's kind of what I want to happen.
I think that even happens today, where you don't see the people today, like journalists today, do not know how to write about hate crimes. They do not know how to write about whenever there's racial tension between the police and the black community. You see there's the breakdown in communication, the way that they're afraid to use certain words, or they allege this or they allege that instead of just saying it. Instead of, you as a journalist have to be a witness for people who weren't there. And if you're witnessing something and you're seeing it, that's the way it should be written. And I think a lot of times they're thinking more of, but certain readers or certain political parties won't like the way that we're saying this, so we have to cut it down the middle and word it a different way. So you still even see that today.
Oh,
sadly.
yeah. Language in media, especially when it pertains to the black body, hasn't changed that much. Like, they always see us as like savages and like these like criminal beasts and just like these like non-human, like grotesque like, it's crazy. It's honestly crazy. And like, yeah, it's we need to change like who's in power, like in news and media, and like our representations. And it's like, I can see progress. Like, I can see us moving into a space where that is changing, but we also have to have more people that are willing to push that needle to the other side. Right. And we can't depend on other people to do it. And so I'm a huge firm believer of like grassroots, local, just, you want to see it happen, you do it. Point blank. Try. And if you don't try, then you didn't, and I don't care. I'm not listening to you. But if you try, then I'm like, all right, cool. Like, now we can move from there,
Right, exactly. So we have this going on all month, and some other activities We have the Scranton Cultural Center. There's an open
Yeah.
mic that you guys are going to do a takeover, which is cool.
Yeah. So I'm excited for that. We're still looking for some talent that wants to participate. So because it is a Black Scranton takeover, I'm looking for like POC artists and talent. You know, I'm not trying to be exclusive, but I also want to give us the stage and the platform. You feel me? So yeah, I'm still looking for like more people to fill up spaces there.
Right.
But it's gonna be really cool. And if I can't, then I'm just gonna have other cool artists. Like it's not that big of a deal. But again, I want to give the POC talent the space first before I like pick other folks that I know who would definitely want to do it. And yeah, so I'm excited for that. We'll see how it goes. I love the Cultural Underground. I think it's so fun. I feel like it gives us a whole nother vibe on like a Tuesday night, and they have like the bar open. It's downstairs. You get to hear some like spoken word and some cool music. Like I haven't gone to a time where I didn't like it. Like there's always been someone cool and different. And then like I get to see a new sound or a new like a new person. I really love that. So I'm definitely excited. I'm glad Maria asked me to do it. And I was like all on board. So yeah.
And we have that. We have the paint night.
Mm-hmm.
That's February 26th at Center City Wine Cellar. Which is that the one in the mall?
So yeah, Center City Wine Cellar is in the mall, but it's going to be in our space, the Black Scranton space, because they're like 2 doors over.
Okay.
So we're partnering with them because they do sip and paints, I think, every couple of months. So we're going to partner with them. Travis, who was in the paper and is one of my featured artists and is so amazing. He's going to host the sip and paint with me. So he's going to do instructional painting. So it'll be really cool, nice vibe. It's $25 and you get a complimentary glass of wine and all the supplies, and then you can go, I think, I don't want to say that yet, but you can go purchase more wine at the wine cellar. I was going to say, I think they might discount it, but like, I don't know.
Right.
So don't quote me.
Promise it, yeah.
Don't quote me. We're still working out all the details.
Right.
No, yeah. We're going to ask for the discount, but maybe if you guys say, yeah, we'll work on it.
And a book club as well.
Oh yeah, we're doing a Super Soul Sunday book club because Oprah, she always does her Super Soul Sundays nice. And I wanted to choose a book that was relevant, interesting, and it also was on Oprah's book club, so I thought it made more sense. We're reading Becoming by Michelle Obama. It's a beautiful book. The way that she writes is amazing, and I chose it because not only does she give you a glimpse into the Black perspective in her life, but she does it in a way that's so relatable, and the way she writes is just like, she's an amazing storyteller, and anyone can really enjoy her writing and the stories that she tells, because the whole part of her book is her becoming Michelle Obama. So it's her as Michelle while she's dating Barack, becomes Michelle Obama, and who she is now. And I think it's like a really cool story of just like evolving and not being afraid of the unknown, and like her writing, like I said, is out of this world, and it's just a beautiful story, and it's great dialogue, and she brings up amazing topics that transcend race that anyone can talk about. So I wanted to make that open again. Like it's not me just being like Black people only. No, it's for everybody. Anyone who wanted to read the book. It's really like a loose book club. So if you only got to like finish the preface, cool. What did you take away from the preface? Like if you got past the book, we'll figure out a way to dialogue on topics, or like if you're like trying to catch up to a space. I don't want people to feel like forced to read, to a certain point, but
Sure.
I want to talk about the book. Like I like reading. I don't always get a chance to read for pleasure because I teach. Have to read a lot of other books, but I'm making that time for this book, and I would love to sit down with people, and we'll have coffee and tea and just, spend an hour and a half reading this book, meeting new people you don't always get to meet, and talking about like a really dope book. And it's relevant, it's brand new, so like you'll be like in the know, like with the New York Times bestseller. And if you still want a copy, the Library Express is selling them, and now they're 25% off with your library card. It was 20%. So
nice.
now, because it's on the New York Times bestseller, it's 25%. So definitely grab that discount, because I think it's only out in hardcover, so it's a little bit more pricey. So you get that discount with the library card. And if you don't have a library card, borrow someone else's, or take them with you to purchase the book, and support the Library Express because they're cool over there too.
And then you're closing out with an open mic night and a closing reception.
Yeah. I wanted to do another open mic just hosted by us. See who comes out. just whoever. I just like, I love the open mic scene. I'm really into like spoken word. I'm working on some of my own spoken word, so I might do it that night. I'm scared, but I wanna read my poetry that I've been working on. So I wasn't sure if I was gonna do it at the Cultural Underground or the last February 28th, our open mic, but one of those 2 days I'll recite my poetry. It'll be fun. Like I'm excited. I want to just invite people, have cool hangout spots, something to do. It's winter time, you don't want to always be out in the cold, but like some cool things to do. So I'm really looking forward to it. And again, it's a lot, but I wanted to go big or go home. We didn't really talk about Black History Month that much, but it is a celebration of Black culture, and it's always kind of in this like cliche way or whatever. And there's certain people like, oh, I don't like Black History Month because like the only time we can celebrate being Black. But I wanted to do it with a bang because we don't ever do that here. We only talk about Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and maybe Malcolm X if they're feeling a little risky,
Right.
So I'm like, so I'm just like, nah. If we're gonna like, let's celebrate. Let's just do it. Like, let's hang out. Let's do different things. Like, I wanna do fun things that I want to do, and I feel like I never participate in them, or I don't feel comfortable going. So it's like, let's do something cool and different and fun for once, and then if it works, then we'll do it again. If it doesn't work, then it was fun that one time. So
Well, we got to wrap up, but I just want to throw some quick comments out from people. Bree said, I'm so proud of you and all you've accomplished so far. I'm always watching what you do, girl. Keep it up. Forever cheering you on.
Oh, thanks, Bree.
And Anne says, join us at LCCC for Zero Discrimination Day, February 28th.
Okay.
I'll have to find out more about that.
Yeah. Send us more info. Put it on our pages.
Let's see. Looks like Thompson agreed with what we were talking about earlier. Nicole John, so proud of you.
That's my cousin. Hey, Nicole, love you.
So let's close with this, I guess. What do you feel? We talked about those barriers and some of the problems we have talking about race around here. How do we break that stuff down and actually have that conversation, move forward? As Scranton overall, I think kind of needs to move forward in a lot of ways. We're always kind of seen as at least 10 years behind the times or so. So how do we, move? I mean, the rest of the country, it seems we're kind of going backwards in a lot of ways. Yeah. How do we move forward, maybe as a city, as an area, and maybe talk about these things?
Yeah, like just be open to talk about race in a constructive way. Like, I think we're always ready to have a comment, but not listen to other people. So, like specifically with this exhibition, I want to open up that dialogue of race. That's one reason why I called it the Black Scranton Project, because you just automatically have to talk about it. So I just want people to start just having dialogue. Being comfortable with talking about race is step number one. And then we can talk about constructive ways to break down stereotypes, to figure out why certain people are limited in access. Maybe you can start addressing how the ways that you maneuver through life is racist. And being okay with the fact that you might be racist, and then fixing it.
People, I think they, like, white people hate getting called racist in any way.
They hate it so much.
Because they can't maybe accept that maybe they're doing something that they don't even know is racist. And therefore they think they're not responsible for it.
Yeah.
But in the same way that if I go outside and, I park in a place I think I can't park and I get a ticket, I still got to pay the ticket.
You still have to pay the ticket.
Because I didn't know that it was against the law to park there doesn't mean that I don't have to pay the ticket.
And then now you know. Now you look at the signs and you're like, okay, I get it.
Now I learned something.
Yeah, and also like just knowing that white privilege is a thing.
That's a whole other thing that we're not willing to accept.
That there's such a thing as white privilege and how it really puts you at an advantage, especially in this city. Just understanding that, and maybe consider being an ally, an agitator. Those are all things, and a listener, and you can be an ally that listens exclusively. That's fine. I think a lot of times I see people who like really, really, really want to be allies so bad, but do it in a way that you just tumble over yourself so badly. And then it's like, then people don't want you around because like you're not really being constructive. Like you're just looking like an idiot and you're not fixing things that are wrong. Like, yeah. So, listen to people and ask if it's okay to also be an ally or an advocate, because sometimes people who are marginalized may need you to give them a platform, but not necessarily speak for them. And then there's a difference between those two. And then there's times where they might need you to speak for them that will give them a platform. And again, a lot of times with that white privilege is like you just want to run in front and then save the day. So white savior is also another thing that falls into that whole place. So what I like to tell people is definitely listen, figure out ways that you can be an ally and an agitator. Start asking other people questions. If you see someone doing something racist or using the N-word, ask them, tell them not to use it, and ask them why they use it, why they think it's okay. And then tell them why you don't think it's okay. You don't have to do it in a way that's like mean or demeaning or like fighting. You could just be like, why do you think that's okay to say that? And then they'll tell you why they think it is. And if you agree, maybe you should figure out why you agree. Or if you disagree, be like, I disagree with that. Like, this is hurtful to a lot of people. And it's hurtful to the people that I consider my friends or people I care about. And if I care about you, why are you using that? You know, like, you can do it in ways that, like, people that are around you in your space will understand. And I think we need to figure out how to talk about race effectively. So that is one thing. Do some research. Look up things that other people are doing to talk about race effectively. I have a class. I teach race and ethnicity. One of my main topics is how to talk about race effectively. And we do that, and we figure out how we talk about race online, figure out how to talk about race in person. That's even harder because people are so afraid to say how they feel in person. Yeah. So, so again, shout out to both of you for sitting down and talking about race effectively and listening and like doing all those things. I think it's really important. And, again, a lot of times people in this area are like super afraid just to like, again, have just dialogue on race and figure out where people are coming from. And sometimes being passionate isn't being angry, and I get that a lot. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you wanted to add or throw in before we?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's probably a lot that I could ask, but
yeah.
That question will lead to more questions.
Yeah,
and
I have that problem with people. I talk a lot, and
but I mean, we'd be here till midnight.
I'm a professor. I lecture for 2.5 hours on a time. You know, it's
I
hard.
mean, there's just a lot.
So yeah, thank you guys, and I hope to see people who are listening or watching come out February 1st at 5 to 8. It is free. I don't know if you know, but you might know because you guys are the music scene. Clarence Spady is going to be our musical guest. He is awesome. He is a friend of the Black Scranton Project, a friend of mine, and I'm so excited to jam out with him. And there'll be wine, cool people, cool food, cool conversations, cool art, cool history. So it'll be a great time. So yeah, come out, have a good time with us. I'm excited, and we'll be open other times. Check out our other events. And that's my plug. Friday is at the marketplace at Steamtown on the second floor. We're near where the food court is. I don't know what they call it now. Is it the market? It's right near the wine cellar.
The marketplace, I think.
It's the marketplace.
Yeah.
But once you go up on the second floor, you will see a big banner that says the Black Scranton Project. So go there.
Well, thank you so much for talking to us about this.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate it. I know whenever we talk about the serious topics, the comments are a little quieter. I've always noticed that. If we have a band on and we're just bullshitting or whatever, everybody's like, When we have these more serious discussions, I think people are more afraid. But I think we need to have these discussions. We need to talk more about this kind of stuff. So, I know we're an arts and entertainment thing, but we're also an alternative publication. I think it's important to tackle these things.
Well, I feel like also people are listening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think so too.
Hopefully they're listening and rather than shooting the comments off. Of the
Yeah, that's the good thing about what we've been able to cultivate with NEPA Scene over the last few years is that we really we don't deal with a lot of the same stuff that you see on like WNEP's page or the Scranton Times page, where the comments just turn into a nightmare. That
Oh
you
my
never wanna
goodness.
read. We rarely deal with that kind of stuff. We really have some cool people that like the page and follow us and understand that we're going to talk about all kinds of different things and are cool with it and want to follow along and listen. Most importantly, listen. So thank you all for being those cool people and tuning in tonight. And we will see you here next Wednesday for a very different topic from tonight. It should be interesting. We'll talk more about that next week. But,
Nice.
What's that?
Thank you for.
I haven't been up. That's fine.
It's between two different things depending on scheduling. So we'll see. But either way, it will be an interesting topic. It will not be what we usually talk about on here. So it'll be pretty cool. But thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.